There's certain things within the world that we need to understand are true, that we need to live out of that truth, and that truth comes from knowing God and it's created by Him.
One of the things that we have recognised in our exploration of what is good education and what is the purpose of education is that there's a problem with education simply to give the child the facts, give them a certain set of skills, and out they go into a job that they're very narrowly prepared for in many ways, and they're not prepared for life, the life outside of work.
What is their purpose in life? And how does that affect their approach to school? And how does that affect how they live? How does that affect how they treat each other? How does that affect how they treat their family?
To train young people to serve the living God in this modern world. The key parts of the mission statement are education, the formation of young people, but I think the second part is that they're reaching a point of service. If we're educating for the service to God or for God, well, what does that look like?
The overall objective of the liberal arts education is to develop humans who love what is true and good and beautiful. Ultimately, which is found in God.
So liberal, the idea of liberating or freeing, and the arts is about the content of study. They really set out what it was to be a free citizen and therefore what subjects a good and free citizen needed.
Liberal arts is an approach that allows young people to find their way to truth, to find their way to God, rather than be indoctrinated. But if you train the young person in the right way to go about how to do that, then you're placing them in a space where when they encounter truth, when they encounter something that is in opposition to the way that they think, they have a capacity or they have a process, if you will, that they can go through to think through what is right and wrong.
A big part of a liberal arts approach is understanding the stages of learning, so grammar, logic and rhetoric.
We want to recognise the neurological development of our students from the primary school through to the secondary and how that matches their ability to learn.
The grammar stage is the Peter 4-5 kind of stage where students learn the fundamental rules and knowledge of each subject.
Fill them with understanding rather than have them trying to figure things out themselves. Real good quality teacher-directed learning.
That's meant to give them this wonderful basis of knowledge and understanding that they can then take into the logic stage, which is where we're teaching them how to reason and how to think well.
When we receive our students in secondary, they have grown and they are now questioning things in the world.
That's when they start pushing back. They start asking questions like, why? Why should I do that? That's the stage they're in. Let's harness the fact that they're asking those kinds of questions.
We get to engage in more analysis. They have the foundational knowledge, and so now they can bring that to the forefront as we look into things a little bit deeper.
And then the final stage of that is known as the rhetoric stage. Put all of their grammar knowledge together with their understanding of the relationships and present their own point of view. Can I express myself in a logical, in a evidenced, in an analytical style that allows people to understand what I'm putting forward. These aren't distinct, as in they don't cut off at a certain year level. They actually layer upon each other, and you would probably see all three in an older classroom with older students because they are still learning grammar all the time depending on their subject area.
It's not just delivery of content, but in fact a relationship that self-perpetuates learning, where the teacher challenges the student and the student challenges the teacher, and there's an extension of the outcomes of what's possible. This is quite targeted by TCC. This is targeted by the liberal arts.
All the while helping them to understand how can they arrive at the truth? How can they arrive at goodness? How can they arrive at beauty being objective realities?
We as a modern society have lost an understanding that we're connected to a history, and we repeat the same mistakes over and over.
They need to have a broad understanding of the world and the society that we live in so that they can actually go about living in it, but also changing those things that they know are wrong with it or not quite right with it.
So the liberal arts approach is to place a student in the historical journey in a chronological fashion that helps them understand how the world changed over time. Our part is trying to figure out, well, where am I in this? And helping the students see, where am I in this? And use a Socratic set of questions to ask about, well, how did that happen? When did that happen? Why did that happen?
To anchor them in great literature.
The best that has been written and the best that has been said, and that's very much at the heart of the liberal arts.
Great literature, if it's written well, will always inform the way that we think about moral issues.
To listen to things that they don't understand and try to understand them, that they would approach things that they wouldn't normally like with charity, that they would think this person is a human that's trying to say something. I wonder what they're really trying to say. And then at the end, make a judgment that they can take it or leave it.
We get to study some amazing classical books and really draw from the human experiences in those books to pursue this truth.
Great literature will also show you what's truly ugly and what's truly deceptive and the fruit of the ugliness and the deceptiveness of the world. They're building this broad understanding that I think leads to really deep and rich wisdom.
They can see where the ideas that have shaped our world into its current state have come from and ask the question, is that good?
So it's almost getting to a point where they start to have to come up with a philosophy of life. And so some of our subjects then are targeted towards that, where we will ask them to think through and discuss with one another these deeper truths placed in the context of time, in the context of history.
It's meaningful learning. I think they find good value in it because they see the meaning in it. It's forming something, and it's not just utilitarian of we've got to learn this because we were told to learn it.
How we view education is very much a formative one that is connected to milestone events or traditions. There's something that we grow through, that we form as we are challenged by each of the events. If each event is designed well, then the events are purposeful.
Memories at school are so important. When they have a good experience with that, they know that this is what good culture looks like.
Each of our traditions, each of our milestone events is put in place that their growth into something better than who they are as individuals is important.
It is not just about the academics. It is not just about the well-being. It is not just about the spiritual aspects and the faith. They all combine together to create an educational experience that develops our young men and women into wonderful leaders, into people that are wanting to serve.
What will I do with this knowledge that I have? I'm called to more. If they understand that, then wisdom is just achieved.
Tell others about Jesus. Stand up for what's right in the world as they grow older and be able to articulate why they're doing that.
So the fact that we would come here and not geared towards a specific career, but learn how to be a good citizen, somebody that contributes, automatically changes students to be less self-aggrandizing, center of the universe thinking. What we have here is the opportunity to get students to think beyond themselves so that when they step into the workforce, that they're thinking about the end goal within the wider world.
We don't see utility, the job at the end of graduation as being the central focus, but the flourishing citizen is actually our central focus at the graduation point of TCC.
The outcomes of making someone more like Christ is that they will be desirous of growth in academia, if that is perhaps where Christ is calling them to serve.
I find that the purpose of the whole thing, that students would connect with God, that they would learn how to be themselves in a way that glorifies the Lord, that they would find their purpose, their reason for being,